What is popping, y'all? It is your man, Cloudboy Bales. And welcome to another episode of Wisco Sports Weekly. Anyways, haven't been on here in a while. Haven't really had much to talk about. But obviously, starting next week is the big week of football where we go from the last year's season to this year's season. It's the biggest part, and it's the craziest week because you're going to see all these posts, all these signings, all these trades. People are already franchising, taking their players. And obviously, I wanted to give an input on what I believe the Packers should do this offseason. There's a lot of things that I kind of have in my mind, obviously leading up to the NFL draft. And this free agency, I really want the Packers to really explore some options because not this season, but next season is going to be a huge one for the Packers because a lot of space is going to be, they're going to have all this space to really work with. And that's what's really exciting. So, of course, I have a bunch of options, what I think they can do as of right now. But in the meantime, if you like what you see, subscribe below, comment with your thoughts, and let's get down to business. First off, the Packers, we'll just go with the easy one right away. We'll get the first thing that I think everybody has on their minds is extend Jordan Love. Do I think he deserves a contract worth basically the rest of his career? No. I think right now you give him about 4 years because obviously he only had one full season with the team. He only has that one cheap deal next year, but you need a contract extension. I mean, he's about 25 now. A contract extension of 4 years will take him to about 30 years old. We don't know how he's going to turn out to be, obviously, in the next couple years, but I think Jordan Love will receive an extension. My belief, if they should do a 4-year extension, which would be great, following after the season, I think they need to extend Jordan Love. It has to happen this season. There's really no choice, especially with how he played this year. He's got a lot of potential. We know that. Anyways, that's that. I'm just going to move on with that, and I'm going to go on with the rest of the stuff. Next up, I'm going to say that the Packers need to bring back Aaron Jones at all costs. I don't care what it means. It's Aaron Jones and Drew Rosenhaus and the Packers. They're going to obviously be negotiating probably within the next week. The hope is that we are going to have to, obviously, in order for him to stay with the team, he's going to have to take a massive pay cut. He's right now getting $17 million. He's going to have to get paid $10 million. That is a lot of money off. Now, the hope is that he's like, you know what? I'm loyal to the Packers. I'll do it. And that's what I think a lot of people are because every year we keep saying Aaron Jones will not be a Packer. Aaron Jones will not be a Packer. I didn't think they'd re-sign him, even when he signed that 4-year contract. But this season is his final season of his contract. You could even consider signing him to maybe a 1 or 2 year extension. But keep in mind, he turns 30 this year. He turns 30. And at that point for a running back, it's like, who knows how good you're going to be. It's going to be difficult to really try to get yourself at that level. But you know what? It's unfortunate. A.J. Dillon is likely not going to be brought back. But of course, if the Aaron Jones is cut by the Packers, they could decide to bring back Dillon. It's possible. But regardless, this NFL draft, 2 running backs should be drafted. Not 1, 2. 2 running backs need to be drafted in this draft. I do not care what you say. First off, this team is stacked at wide receiver and tight end. What's so funny? I honestly would literally believe that Gutekunst might actually still draft one. But our wide receiver room is stacked. Christian Watson, Dobbs, Reed, Wicks, Heath, Melton. I mean, that already is a lot of people already part of this roster. I mean, Melton came out of nowhere. He was like a late bloomer at the end of the season. Really showed that he actually could be valuable for a guy that literally was a guy that we didn't even know about. But I think we are so good at wide receiver right now. These guys are going to grow around Jordan Love. But is it a bad idea to trade for a wide receiver? To to trade one of those wide receivers to get a younger guy? And honestly, I think so. I think we're stacked at wide receiver and tight end. They could draft another tight end. That way we are like good at tight end because we already have two, and obviously we're losing DeGuara and Davis. We could definitely draft another one to maybe be a fullback hybrid type guy. But the only thing I would consider is I actually would trade Christian Watson. I think even though he has something spectacular about him, he's kind of gotten phased out of this offense. And maybe they could go for someone in the second round that actually has a potential to be a number one receiver. For example, Xavier Worthy. This guy is all Packers written all over him. I mean, this is the fastest guy in the combine. I feel like the Packers should take a chance on him, but it's. I know we don't need wide receivers, but if that was the case, they have to trade Christian Watson. Hopefully, I don't know if I really kind of don't want this, but Christian Watson would be a great addition for the Kansas City Chiefs. Just saying. All right, next up, offensive line. Cut David Bakhtiari, cut Royce Newman, let Nyman walk. Hopefully re-sign Jon Runyan, and then go hard in this draft. You need a tackle. Now, maybe it's a starting tackle or a backup tackle, because Rasheed Walker actually did better than you think. Zach Tom is a real great addition as well. I think we're ranked 12th in total for like total tackles for the they were ranked 12 as the tackle tandem, and that's good. They have potential to get better and better. I think they started the year out both rough, but they got better. I don't necessarily feel like we need a starting tackle. You could, but is it possible? Yes. Obviously, it's important to address that tackle spot. Obviously, I think they'll bring back Caleb Jones, as a backup option, but definitely a third tackle would be very smart to have a draft pick, absolutely. Re-signing Runyan won't really be much the guard spot. Myers is the only thing that kind of is the question mark, because next year is his final season with the Packers. You could honestly draft someone who plays both guard and center, because that would basically save the time. So that would really be the good thing for the offensive line. All right, next up, linebacker. Now, this is a position we don't necessarily need. We got Quay Walker, Devondre Campbell, and Isaiah McDuffie. I feel like McDuffie, I think, has got one more year on his contract. Quay's got 2. And then Devondre Campbell, I think, obviously he was signed, but I don't know how much he has left. But personally, I just think they should cut him. And since this team really is all about getting young, I think you got to cut the veterans. Devondre Campbell's got to go, and they got to draft a linebacker as a replacement. I'm thinking Edgerrin Cooper, Jeremiah Trotter, Colson from that Colson guy from Michigan. Those are some great options to really fill in that void. Or they could sign Devin White to 1 year just as a rental, because if no one signs him, because that's very possible. But we'll see. I have no idea. But still, if they cut Campbell, absolutely draft one. All right, next up, I would extend Kenny Clark. I know that some people are like, why would you want to extend someone we already have for a little while? There really isn't many. I only think there's 2 years left on the deal, if I'm correct. So if you think about it, extend him maybe another 2-3 years. That way he'd last the rest of his career as a Packer, and pretty much that. And he's still playing at a high level. I mean, he's worth every penny. To me, having a nose tackle that's always healthy, doing what he does, it's a high level. That's what you need. All right, next up. The big position that I think the Packers need to address is safety. They need to do exactly what they did in 2019. They signed Adrian Amos and drafted Darnell Savage. Now, the hope is they could go after a safety, Xavier McKinney. That guy's name is popping up everywhere. Even someone like Jordan Fuller, they could sign as well. And then also, I think they need to draft a safety as well. There are a lot of names people that are likely going to go in the second round. And 2, look at the safety position. Justin Simmons, Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Eddie Jackson. Those are all guys that played at a high level at the safety spot. Even Kyle Duggar, safety spot, high level. They're all free agents right now. You could even sign one of those guys right now for cheap because maybe some of those guys don't even want. So that's what's crazy. But Xavier McKinney, a 4-year deal would make the most sense. He's young, he has experience, and definitely I think they should draft one as well. Going at the cheap free agents. So obviously if we were to re-sign some free agents, I want the Packers to re-sign Eric Wilson and Christian Welch because depth is important at the inside linebacker spot. Then we don't really have to worry about that spot. And 2, Eric Wilson is phenomenal at special teams. So you got to have a special teams guy on your team. It's important. Corey Ballantyne, also important for special teams. And honestly, he's really not that bad at corner. You really need, and that would help the corner depth because you got Alexander Stokes and Ballantyne. Add Ballantyne, that helps. And then for sure, Keyshawn Nixon, you got to keep. I hope they find a position player that can definitely start at the nickel corner instead of him because I'll be frankly honest, that guy really is not that good of a cover corner. But he obviously, we know how he's one of the best kick returners in football right now. So you got to hopefully keep him. And then the people that they should tender, which are the restricted free agents, are Emmanuel Wilson, who actually did very good last year. Daniel Whelan, who honestly I think we finally found our long-term punter, thank the Lord. And Caleb Jones, because you don't ever find linemen as big as him. Obviously, hopefully he gets playing time at some point, but you never know. But those 3 definitely got to be the ones you need to tender. That would be all cheap deals for everyone that I mentioned. As of right now, we're going to as I want to finish with this video, I want to talk about the draft. Our big position needs are technically, I'll say defensive back, but safety. Defensive back is important because obviously Stokes has 1 more year. You could honestly draft a cornerback to replace him, which is going to be his eventual replacement, just like they did with Kevin King. You could also go after the offensive tackle because obviously if they cut no more Nyman, they cut Bakhtiari. You definitely could use another tackle. Maybe they bump Walker to be a backup, or they actually get a starting left tackle if one of those guys is available. Personally, I think all the good ones are going to be gone by that point, so I feel like the Packers are going to go defense, unfortunately. Guard is important as well. I think any offensive line is important. And then also running back is obviously the big key. And then obviously if they cut Devondre Campbell, inside linebacker. I think right now those are some big position needs that they really need to go over in the draft. Depending on what happens in free agency, I will obviously make a video talking about the top 5 draft needs, as I always do. And to finish my video, I obviously will do my early prediction on who the Packers will draft in the first round. Going over the last couple of years, Jaire Alexander was obviously already a starting tier guy, but what Brian Gutekunst has done has drafted players that have a potential to be stars. In 2019, he did it with Rashawn Gary. Obviously, Darnell Savage, they traded up for it to get because we needed a safety, and that was the right move. But regardless, Rashawn Gary was a guy that played backup in his first 2 years, became a starter in his 3rd year, and really showed why he's a starting edge rusher. Rashawn Gary was a developmental pick. Jordan Love, of course, was a developmental pick. Obviously sat behind Rodgers for 3 years. Then you got 2021, Eric Stokes. Obviously, he was supposed to be a developmental pick behind Kevin King and Jaire Alexander. But of course, Jaire Alexander got injured, and Stokes actually was getting playing time. That was the only difference. But unfortunately, we realized that his health was a concern. He had a good rookie year, just his health was the only issue. But he was supposed to be developmental pick. Stokes wasn't even supposed to be out of the first round. Very following year, Quay Walker. We wanted to take a chance on him. I thought they were going with Nakobe Dean, but they went with the other Georgia linebacker, which wasn't a bad move. But yet again, another guy who has potential. Devontae Wyatt, another guy who has potential. Last year, Luke Van Ness, another guy. riding around. All these guys they want to draft, they let them sit a year or two and then start. And that's what I realized why the Packers have been so successful. It's because they've been going after the positions that are real stalemates for them in the last year. And now they have to do that with safety. They're going to sign Xavier McKinney and maybe Jordan Fuller too. I think those are the two names I would really like the Packers to go after. Maybe one of those older guys for a cheap deal. But I think they will draft a safety this year. And this year, I got it right with Van Ness last year. I did do that. For going 2 in a row, I believe that our first round draft pick will be safety Cameron Kitchens out of Miami. Why? Because this guy isn't supposed to be a first round pick. People think that he's going to be a bust, and that's exactly the reason why the Packers will take him. I know Brian Gutekunst. I know him. I know his thought process, and that move makes the most sense. Cameron Kitchens reminds me of a young Nick Collins. I will say that. That's all I will say. But lots to happen in this offseason, so if you like what you see, subscribe below, comment with your thoughts, and news will obviously come next week. We will see you next time.